So next, I'd like to introduce Andy Marshall. He's the Director of Product Development over at Primus Power.
Great. Well, thanks, Craig, and then thanks also to Joint Venture Silicon Valley for inviting Primus to speak today. It's a great time in storage. Really excited to be here. Primus, like Enervault, is putting our first systems in the field in the next several months. We actually have 3 demonstrations, 2 on the utility side of the meter, 1 on the behind the meter side, which I'll talk about today with the military base down in San Diego at Miramar. Again, a very, very exciting time for us, and I'll give you a little bit more detail about really how our customer thinks about it as well. Just so you know, we're a battery manufacturer up in Hayward, California. We're a zinc bromine flow battery, so we heard a little bit about those technologies. Happy to talk a little bit more in detail about the technology specifically, but in this case, I'll deal a little bit more with the customer viewpoint of storage. So just for a little bit of context, the military, this is no secret, it takes a lot of energy to keep us safe. That ends up costing quite a bit. Just for some context, that's about $20 billion a year that the DoD spends on energy in general. That splits out roughly on an 80-20 basis between field operations. This is everything out, out in the far reaches of the world. That's mainly liquid fuel. That's the cost there. That's generally diesel. And then back on the facility side, I believe they have roughly the size of Ohio in terms of land owned here in the U.S. or land in the U.S. That's another 20% of their load, and a lot of that load currently is served by the grid. And there was a recent study in 2008. I think it's probably pretty well read nowadays. The more fight, less fuel study, and they brought up particularly one of the key weaknesses of the energy strategy for the DoD being the amount of power they actually get from the grid today. We all heard about the vulnerabilities of the grid, and for the military to keep us safe and continue to keep us safe the way they do, they need to have essentially perfect power. And this is the place where microgrids, I think, fit in our particular application with Raytheon down in Miramar deals essentially with a microgrid project. Real quickly, step back and step down on the economics a bit as well. I'm a bit of a geek too. I'm a former consultant, so a good heat map always gets me excited. So here's a heat map on essentially the payback period for a battery PV hybrid microgrid versus a pure diesel microgrid. And a couple of the takeaways, so actually, the green on here means good, fast paybacks under 3 to 5 years. The red is longer paybacks on the order of 10 plus years. So the takeaway from this slide for me is there's a lot of real estate where microgrids make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, back in the US, there's less of that range, but there is a distinct area down in the southern part of the US where the sun is probably some of the best in the world. And it just so happens that the military has a fair number of bases down there. Here's the land that the Southern California Marine bases have in particular. There's several sites here. Again, the largest of these is 29 Palms, roughly 4x the size of San Francisco in land area. You also have Camp Pendleton. I think we've heard a lot about Camp Pendleton recently with the fires, but again, another large military base there. And then the Marine Corps Air Station at Miramar, which is roughly the size of Manhattan. So again, a large land area that has great sun. Right, all of these have excellent resources, and the DoD realizes this, wants to take advantage of the fact that microgrids are incredibly efficient, and then do so to increase their penetration and the reliability of their electricity supply. Today, if you look at the targets that each of these military bases have, each of them are targeting over 50% renewables in the next couple of years. And there's also a significant load there as well. All of these bases together have a load of, just in Southern California, have a load of approximately 65 megawatts, and over 50% of that will be served by renewables in the next couple of years. To go into a little bit more depth on Miramar, essentially they want 2 things. They want to reduce the cost of electricity, Again, they get still a fair amount of their electricity from the grid, and they also want to be able to operate off-grid, essentially. If you look at the usage at Miramar, well, maybe before we go there, this is the same Miramar that was in Top Gun, so you gotta mention that at least sometime during your talk. But their current load somewhere around average about 7 megawatts, peaks out at actually 14, and the minimum is around 5. Currently, they have around 4 megawatts of renewables in total. Most of that solar. They also do have a biomass plant on site as well. The key there for them to reduce cost is essentially on the same story that you hear behind the meter here as well. They pay a demand charge to SDG&E. Having storage with a solar system gives them an opportunity to reduce that demand. So that's your cost reduction. The other element that they want to be able to test is the ability to operate off-grid. To operate off-grid, the key part about being able to operate off-grid is they've actually felt the pain of what it's like to be without power for an extended period of time. So back in 2011, one of the largest power outages in the country, and probably the largest, I think, in California, affected their operations for over 8 hours. As part of that outage, they weren't able to land planes. They weren't able to open their gates. They had food spoiling in their mess hall. It was essentially it was not a situation that they want to see, especially during a time of potentially a crisis. So again, this is an incredibly pertinent need for them. And part of our demonstration is actually with the solar plant that we're going to be integrating with, the solar array we're going to be integrating with, is to be able to operate their base a small set of their base off-grid for 3 days, essentially with solar and battery itself. That project that we're doing is a combination project with Raytheon. They're the project lead and the ESTCP granting agency. Raytheon is serving as the project integrator here. They're providing the system smarts, we're providing the battery, and we're integrating with solar that already exists on site. Interesting fact about this project, remember that I mentioned that power outage that affected Miramar. Raytheon went to give their interview essentially for this bid 2 days after that. So I think it was maybe one part of the process that greased the skids for having this project go through. The other thing I think I should mention about this project is Primus, Raytheon was very interested in testing a zinc-bromine flow battery. What they really like about the zinc-bromine flow batteries is their deep cycling capabilities. They also like, in particular, our battery because of the durability of that. And they actually ran us off against a couple of other zinc-bromine battery companies who already have systems in the field, but chose Primus because of that, the durability of our systems. To go into just a little bit of detail on exactly what we're doing here, essentially the brawn of the system is our energy storage. It's a 250 kilowatt, 1 megawatt hour system in a 40-foot shipping container. That is being mated today with a 230 kilowatt solar plant, solar array, that'll be controlled by a Raytheon control system. That control system will enable the battery and the solar to operate in an off-grid fashion. So we can operate as an island, and we can also operate in a grid-connected mode. To date, we have tested that control system. So Raytheon's actually controlled our battery from Massachusetts, the battery that we have operating here in Hayward. And this summer, we'll also test the two inverter systems together with their control system to make sure that islanding operations and regular grid-tied operations works well. We will put this system live at some point in Q1 next year, likely January, and looking forward to getting this underground and demonstrating particularly the off-grid and cost reduction capabilities of this microgrid. I have a video as well. Oh, and it's going to start right away. This is great. So I haven't bored you already, but here we go. We have, essentially this is our energy pod. There's two elements. There is on the left-hand side, there's our power conditioning. On the right-hand side, it's our battery box. Our DC battery box has 14 flow battery cells. This is where we've taken a little bit of a different approach than other flow batteries. So we have a modular system that can be scaled either for behind-the-meter type applications, so we can imagine using one of these cells, or a series of these cells as well. Our balance of plant is essentially completely off the shelf. So we're using grid-tied inverters that are already used in the field. And again, that gives us capabilities to tie into most grids pretty relatively easily. Our battery's been tested by Sandia National Labs, and currently this is the cell we have running. This was actually tested by Sandia. This system has 15 patents. Our 39-cell metal electro-based stack has the majority of those patents. We also have a number of patents related to the flow of electrolyte, which allows us to operate without a separator, and also allows us to plate repeatedly zinc over a long period of time. We intend to manufacture the first couple of pods here in Hayward, but we're going to soon move that to a contract manufacturer. We actually released the name of that. Actually, they announced that a couple of weeks ago. Our contract manufacturer is Sanmina. Most of these will be manufactured here locally to start, and then it'll allow us to then eventually scale over time to not only the rest of the U.S., but worldwide as well. Obviously, I moved a little bit slow for my video, but that's the end. That's essentially our deployment at Miramar. Again, 1 megawatt-hour of battery under the solar panels on the base site. So I'll pause there for questions. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any other questions about Primus, our technology, or other deployments, come see me after the talk. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Do you have any questions? Going. Oh, here we go.
Maybe quickly, talk a little bit about what it's been like, as much as you can, talk about what it's been like working with Raytheon as a partner there. How did the relationship start? Clearly, they have an ability to bid into a project like Miramar, but what sort of demands have been placed on Primus in that process?
Yeah, and actually, that's a great question. Actually, I think it flows down from the Marine side too, right? You can imagine Marines don't set aspirational goals; they set goals and they go and achieve those goals. So a lot of those, you can even see it in the targets they've set on the renewable side. They've hit those targets year after year. So we are kept to a pretty tight schedule. Part of the way we work together with Raytheon is to actually do projects like I mentioned, testing our cells, testing the control system ahead of time, setting up meaningful demonstrations of the technology out ahead of our deployment. That not only keeps the folks at Raytheon happy, but also the folks at the base as well. And because we've been able to do sort of these small little projects, marching them along, I think we've been able to give the teams both at Miramar and at Raytheon a lot of confidence in our technology.
Any more questions? All right, thank you very much.
Great, thanks.